Daniel Weston stood outside the luxury watch store that bore his family name, Weston Timepiece. Staring up at the silver logo gleaming against a glass facade, 6 high-end locations across the country carried that name, his name. And yet, for the past 2 years, he hadn't stepped foot inside this Beverly Hills flagship store. Sales were steady. Online reviews still sparkled. On the surface, everything looked perfect. But recently, rumors had started to spread. Customers claiming they were lied to about the history of their watches. Gemstones exaggerated in value. Limited edition pieces that, in truth, were nothing more than customized fakes. Daniel could feel it deep down. Something was wrong. Very wrong. Today, he wasn't here as a CEO. He wasn't here to read another report. He was here to see it for himself. Disguised as an ordinary customer, he stepped through the glass doors, ready to listen, ready to observe, and ready to uncover the truth. Daniel Weston stood across the street from his own store, Weston Timepiece, his family name, carved in polished silver letters on the glass facade of their Beverly Hills flagship, the crown jewel of a 6-store empire. His father built it from scratch. Daniel expanded it into a national luxury brand. And yet, today, that name felt strangely distant to him. 2 years. 2 whole years since he last stepped inside this location. Of course, the reports kept coming. Sales numbers looked strong. Customer feedback online seemed controlled, almost too perfect. But Daniel Weston wasn't a man who trusted numbers more than instinct. And lately, something felt off. Too many quiet complaints. Too many whispers about questionable sales practices. A few anonymous letters. Words like overpriced knockoffs or misleading heritage stories floated in between them. It wasn't concrete, but it didn't have to be. Daniel knew one thing. When a brand stops being about truth, it starts dying slowly from the inside. So he made a decision. The same kind his father would have made. He'd go undercover, not as a CEO, not as Daniel Weston, the luxury entrepreneur gracing magazine covers, but as just another customer. He adjusted his disguise in the side mirror of a parked car, a neatly trimmed beard, reading glasses, a weather cap pulled low. His tailored suits were replaced by a simple navy jacket over jeans. Ordinary, invisible, perfect, taking a breath. He crossed the street. As he pushed open the door to Weston Timepiece, a familiar scent greeted him. The subtle blend of mahogany with polish, leather from the watch straps, and a faint trace of cologne favored by their high-end clientele. The store was beautiful. Pristine marble floors, gold-framed display cases, soft ambient lighting casting gentle reflections on timepieces worth more than some cars. But it wasn't beauty Daniel came for. It was true. A young salesman approached him with a sharp smile, slick back hair, flawless suit. His name tag read Ethan Senior Watch Consultant. Everything about him screamed polished confidence. "Good afternoon, sir," Ethan greeted, his voice smooth as silk. "Looking for something special today?" Daniel kept his tone relaxed. "Just browsing. Thinking about adding to my collection. Something with a story." Ethan's eyes lit up. "Well, sir, you come to the right place. Every watch here tells a story." Daniel raised an eyebrow. It was a rehearsed line, but harmless enough, until it wasn't. As they walked toward one of the displays, Ethan pointed to a vintage-looking timepiece, a gold wristwatch with an intricate sapphire crown. "This," Ethan whispered like a conspirator, "belonged to a European aristocrat in the 1950s. Restored with original components. One of a kind." Daniel's heart sank. He knew this watch. He'd seen the records himself. It wasn't the 1950s. It wasn't aristocratic. It wasn't even original. It was a reissued model from 2003, mass-produced with synthetic sapphire. A clean reproduction. Elegant, sure, but not what Ethan just claimed. Daniel kept his expression neutral. "A piece of history, huh?" he asked quietly. Ethan smiled wider. "Absolutely. And of course, The value will only appreciate. We only sell authentic legacy pieces here. Daniel's stomach twisted. This wasn't a stretch of the truth. This was fabrication. But before he could respond, another voice cut in, soft but firm. "Ethan, that's not accurate." Daniel turned. A young woman stood near the counter. Her uniform neat but understated. Her name tag read Emma, Quality Control Specialist. Her expression was calm, but edged with discomfort. The Heritage Edition models were introduced in 2003, Emma clarified politely. Limited run, yes, but not vintage. For a second, just a second, Daniel saw something in her eyes. Integrity. Ethan shot her a look sharp enough to cut glass. "Emma, could you handle restocking the back?" "I've got this." Emma hesitated. Her lips pressed into a thin line, but she nodded and disappeared into the stockroom. Daniel exhaled slowly. Now he knew this wasn't an isolated lie. This was a system. And if one employee was brave enough to speak up, there were likely others too afraid to do so. He looked back at Ethan, who had already switched back to salesman mode. "Would you like to see our private collection, sir?" Ethan asked, gesturing toward a velvet curtain room at the back. Daniel smiled faintly. "Oh, yes." He was staying, and he was going to see everything. Daniel followed Ethan to the velvet curtain into a quieter, more intimate space. The private collection room. Soft jazz played from hidden speakers. Spotlights illuminated watches and glass domes. Each piece carefully staged like priceless art. But for Daniel Weston, these displays didn't shine like before. They cast shadows. Ethan walked ahead, the perfect host. "These are some of our rarest acquisitions, sir," he said smoothly. "Pieces with unmatched heritage. We've flown them in from collectors worldwide." Daniel said nothing. He let Ethan guide him deeper into the illusion. It was like watching a magician perform a cheap trick, knowing exactly where the wires were hidden. They stopped at a rose gold chronograph watch with an ornate dial. "This one," Ethan whispered reverently, "belonged to a British naval officer during World War II. Custom engraving, passed down through generations." Daniel's eyes narrowed. "No, that model was a Weston Limited series from 2010. It was beautiful, but it wasn't history. It was a product, designed, crafted, but born here, not in war-torn Europe." Daniel let the lie hang in the air. "Remarkable," he murmured. Ethan's smile stretched wider. "Would you like to reserve it, sir? We only have one in this condition." Daniel took a long breath. "Tell me something," he said casually. "How long have you worked here?" Ethan straightened. 7 years. Top sales every quarter." "Impressive," Daniel replied, his tone even. But inside his heart was sinking. 7 years. After 7 years in his family's company, Ethan had mastered the art of deception like breathing. Daniel's thoughts turned to Emma, the only flicker of truth he'd seen today. Why was she still here? Why hadn't she left like so many probably did? Maybe because some people don't run from the truth. Maybe because some people believe their fight isn't over yet. Ethan interrupted his thoughts. "We pride ourselves on our legacy," he said, placing his hand on the glass dome. "Weston Timepiece has always been about timeless stories." Daniel almost flinched at those words. Not stories. Truth. That was what his father taught him. Stories are beautiful, but truth is sacred. Daniel leaned in, lowering his voice. "And what about warranties?" he asked casually. Ethan grinned like a shark sensing blood. "For these rare pieces? Lifetime coverage. Parts, labor, everything." Daniel's stomach turned cold. Lie. Luxury watches, especially vintage or limited runs, never came with lifetime warranties. Too many variables. Too many unknowns. Ethan was selling fantasy, but fantasy had a cost, and Daniel was done paying for it. He straightened slowly. "I think I've seen enough," Daniel said. Ethan blinked. "Sir." Daniel stepped back through the curtain, out of the private room, back into the main showroom. He saw Emma near the front counter, carefully inspecting a shipment of straps, her focus unwavering. This was the moment. He walked over quietly. "Excuse me," he said, his voice low. Emma looked up, cautious recognition in her eyes. "Yes, sir?" Daniel studied her, the calmness in her posture, the quiet strength. He dropped his voice further. "That watch earlier," he said. "Thank you for correcting the story." She hesitated, unsure. "It's part of my job," she replied carefully. Daniel allowed himself a small smile. Not everyone here sees it that way. Her eyes flickered, understanding. "No," she said quietly. "They don't." He paused, weighing his next words. "Do you like working here?" he asked. Emma looked at him, really looked. "I like what Weston used to stand for," she said simply. That sentence hit harder than any accusation. Daniel Weston, CEO, son of a craftsman, stood before a stranger who unknowingly voiced his greatest fear, that his name, his family's legacy, was now just branding, just another label for luxury lies. Daniel exhaled slowly. "I'm glad someone remembers," he said softly. Emma's brow furrowed, curious. But before she could speak, a sharp voice sliced through the air. "Emma." It was Robert, the showroom manager, mid-50s, clean-shaven, perfectly pressed suit. "Step into my office. Now." Emma's posture stiffened. She threw Daniel an apologetic glance, then walked toward Robert's glass-walled office. Daniel's eyes followed them. He could see Robert's frustration boiling over, likely about her earlier correction. Daniel's jaw clenched. He could guess exactly what that conversation would sound like. Don't embarrass the team in front of customers. Stick to the sales pitch. Know your place. But Emma didn't need to know her place. She already did. Her place was standing on the truth. Daniel turned. His cover had served its purpose. Now it was time to step out of the shadows. Not yet to confront, but to watch, to listen, and to plan. Because all of this was about a change. Forever. Daniel Weston stood near the glass showcase, his reflection staring back at him. The man who had built an empire but somehow lost sight of its soul. Through the pane of Robert's office window, he watched Emma sit across from the manager. She sat upright, composed, yet something in her posture betrayed quiet exhaustion. Daniel couldn't hear the words, but he didn't need to. He had seen that conversation play out too many times before, in too many companies, in too many broken systems. The kind of conversation where truth gets treated like an inconvenience. Robert's expression was tight, lips pressed into a thin, forced line, leaning forward with sharp, clipped hand gestures. Emma barely flinched, but Daniel caught it. That subtle shift of her jaw, the smallest tightening of her hands on her lap. She was holding the line, alone, and he knew exactly how lonely that fight could feel. His thoughts flashed back, memories of his father in their original watch workshop decades ago. "Son," his father had once said, polishing the back of a vintage case, "a watch that lies about its movement isn't worth wearing. Neither is a man." Daniel's throat tightened. He turned away from the window. This had gone far enough. He strode quietly toward Robert's office, no longer hiding, no longer observing. He knocked once. Robert's eyes darted to the door, annoyance flickering, until his expression froze. Recognition swept over his face like ice water. Emma turned too, confusion crossing her features as her gaze met Daniel's. But Daniel Weston, CEO, owner, and son of a craftsman, no longer needed to play a part. He opened the door. "Robert," Daniel said, his voice calm but impossibly steady. "Step outside. I need a word with Emma." Robert hesitated, the color draining from his face. "Sir, I didn't know you were." "I'm sure you didn't," Daniel replied, his tone never rising, but firm enough to silence the room. Without waiting for a reply, Robert stepped out, stiff, wary. Daniel closed the door gently behind him, turning back to Emma, who now stared at him with wide, uncertain eyes. "You're Daniel Weston," she said quietly, not a question, just quiet realization. He nodded once. I am. For a heartbeat, silence stretched between them. And then Daniel did something Emma clearly didn't expect. He sat down, not behind the desk, not above her, across from her, at eye level, human to human. I owe you an apology, he said softly. Emma blinked, guarded. For what? For putting you in a position where doing the right thing felt like a risk. The words hung heavy in the air. Emma's expression shifted, not with relief, but with the faintest trace of respect. Truth isn't supposed to feel dangerous, Daniel continued. Not here, not in this company, not under my name. Emma looked at him, really looked. She saw no rehearsed speech, no corporate polish, only a man who looked more tired than powerful. And perhaps that's what made him more powerful than ever. I appreciate what you did out there, Daniel said, speaking up, even when it wasn't easy. Emma hesitated. I wasn't sure it mattered, she admitted. Daniel let out a quiet breath. It does. It always does. Another pause. Then, with a glance toward the window, Emma asked a question burning quietly inside her. What happens now? Daniel leaned back, thinking. Outside, through the glass walls, the showroom buzzed on, oblivious to the turning tide. I'm not here for optics, Daniel said finally. And I'm not here to protect a brand built on fiction. He looked her straight in the eye. I'm here to fix what's broken. From the inside out. Emma studied him, weighing his words, testing their weight. Finally, after a beat, she spoke. You're going to have a fight on your hands, she said quietly. This culture didn't happen overnight, and not everyone wanted to change. Daniel's lips curved, the faintest trace of smile. I didn't build Weston Timepiece to back down from hard things. Another pause. And I didn't come here today expecting to find someone brave enough to stand for what's right. He straightened slowly. But I'm very glad I did. He stood, offering her a hand. Will you help me? He asked simply. Emma looked at him, the weight of everything unsaid between them. Slowly, steadily, she reached out and shook his hand. Yes, Mr. Weston, she said quietly. I will. Outside the office window, Robert watched nervously, and beyond him, the rest of the showroom staff remained blissfully unaware. But they wouldn't be for long. Change was coming, and it wasn't coming quietly. Daniel Weston stood in the center of his father's legacy, but this time it didn't feel like home. It felt like a battlefield. The quiet conversation with Emma had shifted something inside him. Not anger, not disappointment. Something heavier. Responsibility. This wasn't about one bad salesman. This wasn't even about one store. This was about what happens when good people stay quiet too long. And Daniel Weston was done staying quiet. He stepped out of the office with Emma by his side. The hum of the showroom buzzed around them. Employees moved like clockwork. Practiced smiles, polished words, selling stories as much as watches. But today, that clock was about to stop. Robert, Daniel called, his voice calm but impossible to ignore. The manager turned, stiffening as if every line on his suit just tightened. Gather everyone, Daniel said. Now. Robert hesitated, then obeyed. Minutes later, the entire floor team stood before Daniel. A mix of curiosity, nervous energy, and hidden resistance. Some recognized him, some whispered, but all of them felt it, the air shifting, the ground beneath them cracking. Daniel looked around, slowly, letting the silence stretch long enough to sting. I built Weston Timepiece with my father, he began, his voice steady. We built it for people who understood that a watch wasn't just about time. It was about trust. He paused, letting the word hit them. Trust. And what I saw today. Daniel's eyes landed on Ethan, who stood rigid, jaw clenched. It was not trust. It was a theater. It was dishonesty. Murmurs rippled through the group. Some shifted uncomfortably. Some, like Emma, stood taller. Daniel continued. We don't sell stories here. We sell truth, or we sell nothing at all. He turned directly to Robert. And when leadership forgets that when they look away from lies, they don't just fail their customers. A beat. They fail me. The room went still. Daniel took a breath. So here's what happens next. His voice never rose, but every word landed like a weight on stone. Every transaction made in the past year will be reviewed. Every misled customer will be contacted. And every employee here will go through full retraining on ethical sales standards, or they won't be here at all. Silence, until Ethan scoffed, barely a sound, but enough. Daniel turned his gaze toward him. You have something to say, Ethan? Ethan's massive confidence cracked. I've been in this business a long time, Ethan said sharply. This is how it works. Customers expect a story. They want to feel special. You start telling them cold facts. They'll walk out. Daniel studied him, not with anger, but with quiet sadness. Then let them walk, Daniel replied. Because if the only way we can keep a customer is by lying, then we don't deserve them. The words hung in the air like a judgment from the walls themselves. Robert shifted nervously. What about our numbers? He asked. Our quotas. Daniel looked at him, tired but resolute. I care more about our name than our numbers. A pause. Numbers go up and down. Integrity stays forever. Emma, standing near the edge of the group, exhaled, the smallest smile touching her lips. For the first time, someone was saying out loud what she had been holding inside. Daniel wasn't finished. Ethan, he said firmly, you're suspended, effective immediately. HR will follow up. Ethan's face turned pale, rage simmering beneath his skin, but he said nothing. Because what could he say? Daniel turned to the rest. For those who stay, for those who want to rebuild what this place was meant to be, I will stand with you. He let the words settle. But then, softer, he added, for those who can't, that door is always open. Silence. But this time it wasn't fear. It was reckoning. Daniel turned back to Robert. You'll oversee the customer outreach personally. And Emma, he glanced at her, you'll lead the new integrity and quality training program. Emma's eyes widened, shocked. Robert's expression twisted, but Daniel cut him off with a glance. It's earned, Daniel said simply, not gifted. Emma swallowed, then nodded. I won't let you down, she said quietly. Daniel offered her the smallest smile. I know. As he stepped back, letting the employees slowly disperse, the energy in the room shifted again, not towards anger, not towards fear, but towards something else. Hope. Daniel Weston stood alone for a moment, staring at the reflection of his family's name on the glass walls. He wasn't here to save face. He was here to save what mattered most. It started with a headline. Daniel Weston wasn't surprised. Weston Timepiece CEO suspends top salesman after undercover visit. Accusations of dishonesty rock luxury brand. The media loves stories like this. David versus Goliath. Leader versus corrupt culture. But Daniel knew better. This wasn't a clean victory. This was war. And war had noise. Within 48 hours, every luxury watch blog, business column, and social media thread was ablaze. Some praised him. Finally, a CEO who cares about values. Others mocked him. Publicity stunt. Damage control. Luxury PR gone viral. But the worst storm wasn't outside. It was inside. Daniel sat alone in his downtown office, early morning light pouring through floor-to-ceiling windows, reading emails from internal staff. Not all of them were kind. Some were scared. Some were furious. Most were confused. Emma had forwarded him a few screenshots from the internal group chat of the Beverly Hills store. They stung more than any headline. She just wanted attention. That girl Emma destroyed our bonuses. Daniel Weston doesn't understand what it's like down here. Daniel exhaled slowly, running a hand through his hair. This was the cost of doing things right. People didn't just resist change. They hated it. especially when it exposed them. Later that afternoon, Daniel returned to the Beverly Hills showroom, not as a mystery shopper, not as a ghost, but as Daniel Weston. The air was colder. Conversations quieted when he entered. Emma was at her new desk, now officially overseeing quality and ethics training. But even she looked uneasy, not afraid, just tired. Daniel walked over. "You holding up?" he asked. She looked up, giving a small, brave smile. "I knew it wouldn't be easy." Daniel nodded. "It's harder than I thought, too." She hesitated. "They hate me." Daniel didn't argue. "They hate the mirror we're holding up to them." Silence stretched between them, not awkward, but honest. Finally, Emma asked a question sitting heavy in her heart. "Do you think this will actually work?" Daniel Weston, the CEO with 6 luxury stores, didn't offer a perfect answer. He offered the truth. "I don't know," he said quietly, "but I know what happens if we do nothing." Emma's eyes met his. "And I know this," Daniel added. "Whatever comes next, you won't stand alone." He turned, scanning the showroom. Robert stood in the corner, arms crossed, watching everything with weary eyes. Daniel walked over. "We need to talk," Daniel said. In the back office, away from employees, Robert shut the door. His shoulders sagged. "This is a mess," Robert muttered. "Half the team wants to leave. The other half thinks Emma's your favorite." Daniel didn't flinch. "Is that what you think?" Robert hesitated. "I think we build a system that rewards the wrong things." Daniel studied him. Finally, Robert sighed. "I don't like how we got here, but I don't know how to fix it." Daniel's reply was simple. "We start with telling the truth." He placed a folder on the desk. "I want every customer who was misled contacted personally. Refunds, repairs, whatever it takes." Robert stared at the folder, the weight of decades pressing down on him. "I'll do it," he said quietly. "But what about the rest of the staff? The resentment? The gossip?" Daniel leaned forward. "Then we outlast it." Robert's eyes narrowed. "That's simple." Daniel shook his head. "Nothing simple about it. That's why most companies fake it." Robert chuckled, dry. "And you're not most companies?" Daniel smiled, faint but real. "I'm not my father's son just to protect numbers on a spreadsheet." Later that evening, Daniel gathered the entire Beverly Hills team. No PR cameras, no press, just people. He stood before them, without a microphone, without fanfare. "I know this is hard," he began. "I know many of you are angry." He paused, letting it settle. "I'm not here to make it easy. I'm here to make it right." Some employees looked away. Some, like Emma, watched with quiet strength. Daniel continued. "You don't have to believe me today. You don't even have to like me. But if you stay here, if you choose to wear the Weston name, then you choose truth." He looked around. "And for those who can't, I understand. There's no shame in walking away." Silence. "Wait." But this time, something shifted. Not applause, not cheers, but acceptance. Daniel Weston wasn't asking for loyalty. He was asking for integrity. And in that moment, that was worth more. As the crowd dispersed, Emma lingered. Daniel turned. "You think they'll stay?" he asked. Emma's voice was soft, but sure. "The right ones will." Daniel Weston smiled. It wasn't a victory, but it was a first step, and that was enough. Weeks passed. The headlines faded. The noise died down. But inside Weston Timepiece, something else had started to grow. Not sales, not buzz, something quieter. Respect. Daniel Weston returned to Beverly Hills store one early Saturday morning. Not in a suit, not a CEO, but just Daniel, the man his father raised, the man he hoped to become. What he found waiting for him, he didn't expect. Emma stood near the front, surrounded by a small group of young people. Students, fresh faces, some shy, some curious. They hovered around a table, not of luxury watches, but of broken parts, scratched cases, loose springs, disassembled movements. Learning. Emma looked up, caught his eye, and smiled. Daniel stepped closer. "What's this?" he asked, voice low. Emma's eyes sparkled, tired but alive. "It's our first craftsmanship workshop," she said. "Open to students who want to learn watch repair, without the sales pitch." Daniel's throat tightened. There was no logo here, no brand, just hands, work, truth. He nodded, quietly proud. Later, as the workshop ended, Daniel pulled Emma aside. "You didn't have to do this," he said. Emma shrugged, a small, private smile. "You said we should rebuild from the inside out." Daniel chuckled, the sound dry but warm. "I meant policies, procedures, training." Emma looked at him, unblinking. Those come later. People come first. And Daniel knew. She was right. The best parts of his father's legacy weren't in the glass cases. They were here, in people like Emma, in students with callous hands. Learning is not just a skill, but a way of life. That night, Daniel sat in his office, alone. He stared at an old photo on the wall, him as a boy, next to his father at the original Weston Timepiece workshop. Underneath the photo, carved into wood, were the words, "Real craftsmanship never lies." Daniel exhaled slowly. He picked up his phone. Tomorrow, he would announce something new, a scholarship, the Weston True Craftsmanship Grant, for students, for dreamers, for those who wanted to build, not sell, something real. It wouldn't fix everything, but it would build something better. A week later, in front of staff, press, and customers, Daniel stood near the entrance of the Beverly Hills store. He unveiled a small wooden plaque. Not gold, not silver, wood, just like the original workshop. The words carved into it. Luxury is not in the price. Luxury is in the truth. He didn't make a speech. He didn't need to. The people who stayed already knew. The people who left were gone, and that was okay. Daniel turned, catching him in the crowd, and nodded, not as her boss, not as her CEO, but as someone who believed in the same thing she did. A future built not on image, but on hands, on honesty, on things worth leaving behind. It was a quiet Sunday. Beverly Hills wasn't awake yet, but inside Weston Timepiece, something was happening. Something you couldn't measure in sales. Something you couldn't fake in marketing. Legacy. Daniel Weston stood at the very entrance of the store, looking up at the small wooden plaque he had placed there weeks ago. Luxury is not in the price. Luxury is in the truth. Behind him, the sound of soft laughter echoed. Emma was at the workbench with Tyler and Grace, two students from the very first workshop, teaching them how to assemble a movement piece by piece. Not rushing, not perfect, just real. Daniel turned, watching them carefully polish each small gear, each fragile spring. His father would have loved this moment. He would have said, "Money fades, work stays." Daniel's chest tightened. That afternoon, as customers came and went, something else caught his eye. Robert, the old manager. He wasn't standing at the back anymore. He was right there, near Emma, guiding a customer through the history of a vintage model. No tricks, no spin, just facts. He caught Daniel's gaze, gave a small nod. Daniel nodded back. It wasn't friendship. It was respect. Earned, built, slowly. Later that evening, as the store closed, Emma approached Daniel near the entrance. She hesitated, then handed him something. A watch box. Simple, unbranded. Daniel raised an eyebrow. "What's this?" he asked. Emma smiled. "Something the students made for you." Daniel opened the box. Inside, a hand-assembled watch. Not perfect. The dial was slightly uneven, the engraving rough around the edges. But on the back, carved with care, were the words, "Built by hands, protected by truth." Daniel stared at it for a long, silent moment. His throat tightened. He looked up. "Thank you," he said, voice low, raw. Emma shrugged, that quiet humility that never left her. "It's not about perfection," she said. "It's about effort." Daniel Weston smiled, real, unguarded. "You've learned well." Emma smiled back. "I had a good teacher." Outside, the city lights of Beverly Hills shimmered. Inside, Weston Timepiece wasn't just a store anymore. It was a workshop. It was a classroom. It was home. Daniel stood there, long after everyone else left, the new watch still in his hands. He glanced once more at the plaque, and for the first time in a long time, he felt peace. He had lost many things chasing success. But this was something he could leave behind without regret. A name, a place, a truth, not perfect, but real, and real that stays forever. Sometimes the most valuable thing a business can sell isn't a product, it's trust. And trust isn't built in a day. It's built in the quiet choices, the small honesty, the hands behind the work. Daniel Weston didn't save a company by chasing numbers. He saved it by remembering what his father taught him. Real craftsmanship never lies. Success comes and goes, but integrity, that's forever.